The sunlight spilled across the living room floor in gold patches, and I traced its warmth with my hand, feeling the soft swell of my belly beneath the silk blouse I'd chosen this morning. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of traffic outside and the low whistle of the refrigerator. My phone buzzed insistently on the marble countertop. I glanced at it, a group message from my parents and sister. "We're leaving for Europe tomorrow. Watch the house. Just give birth already." I stared at the words, a mixture of disbelief and simmering anger curling in my chest. Really? That was all the thought they gave me. No check-in, no "are you okay?" Just a command buried in emojis and casual detachment. I leaned against the counter, letting my fingers play with a thin gold chain around my neck, the one my grandmother had given me years ago. She had whispered once, "The world doesn't wait, Hannah. Neither should you." A bitter laugh escaped me. I had waited. For them, for permission, for validation. And now, here I was, carrying life, navigating this alone while they jetted off to cafes in Paris and gondolas in Venice. I rubbed my temple, listening to the faint creak of the stairs under my own weight. The scent of coffee lingered from earlier, but I hadn't had the energy to pour a cup. My reflection in the window stared back at me, determined, exhausted, and furious all at once. It was the kind of moment that demanded a choice: cry, scream, or finally take control. I remember the first time I realized that leaning on my family would never be enough. I was 22, freshly graduated, and full of ideas about starting my own business. I had packed my small apartment with sketches, notebooks, and dreams, brimming with excitement. "Why can't you just get a normal job, Hannah?" my mother had snapped that evening. Her voice sharp, cutting through the tiny kitchen air like a knife. "Something stable. Something that doesn't waste your time." My hands had trembled as I clutched a notebook close to my chest, my fingers sticky with pencil smudges. The lump in my throat was so big, I thought I might choke on it. I tried to explain, to tell her that passion could become purpose, that I wasn't afraid of hard work. But it came out as a jumble of words, a tangle of frustration and fear. My father had just leaned back in his chair, sighing, scrolling through his phone as if my words were background noise. "You're overthinking it," he said. "One day, you'll figure out you're not ready." I remember stepping into the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, feeling it burn against my skin as if to remind me that the world didn't care about my doubts or their opinions. I shook with anger and disbelief. I was supposed to be their little girl, but suddenly, I felt smaller than ever. It was my grandmother who had given me the courage to keep going. "Hannah," she had said, pressing a soft, worn hand over mine, "you have to trust yourself. People will doubt you. Life will doubt you. But you cannot." She had handed me a small locket, one she'd carried through her own struggles. "This will remind you, strength isn't given. It's earned." That night, I packed the last of my things, said little to no goodbyes, and walked out the door. For the first time, I was stepping into life on my own terms, fueled by fear, hope, and the small weight of her locket in my palm. That decision, my first act of independence, would become the cornerstone of everything I would build. I closed my eyes, feeling the memory ripple through me. Even now, as I stared at my parents' message about Europe and the house, I felt that same fire. The world didn't wait, and neither would I. Leaving home felt like stepping into the unknown, but I carried my grandmother's locket like a compass. I rented a small studio apartment in a city that smelled of coffee, rain, and opportunity. The first nights were brutal: paper-thin walls, a squeaky radiator, and the constant hum of anxiety buzzing in my chest. I remember sitting on the edge of my tiny bed, rubbing my belly months before I was expecting my own little one, thinking, "You've got to do this. No one else will." I found work at a small design firm, mostly as an assistant, but I soaked in every detail: how contracts were drawn, how clients hesitated before investing in new ideas, how confidence could command a room. My mentor, Claire Thompson, a seasoned designer with a sharp eye and a soft smile, saw potential I hadn't even dared to imagine. She didn't coddle me. She pushed me to pitch ideas, to stand in front of clients, and to believe that my voice mattered. "Hannah," she said one evening, leaning over a cluttered drafting table, "don't let anyone shrink you. Not even yourself." The learning curve was relentless. Long nights bled into early mornings. I fell asleep with my laptop balanced on my knees, tutorials humming in the background, sketching layouts for imaginary clients. Doubt crept in constantly. Could I really do this while carrying life inside me? Was I strong enough? But each small victory, landing my first freelance client, seeing my designs published, receiving that first paycheck that didn't feel like borrowed money, fueled the fire inside me. I became careful with my family. I posted vague updates online, pictures of sunsets or coffee mugs, avoiding details of my growing independence. They didn't need to know that I was slowly taking control of my life, that I was building a world they would never imagine for me. The apartment became more than a place to sleep. It became my sanctuary, my canvas. Walls slowly filled with art I had collected on small trips, plants I nurtured, and mementos that reminded me of victories large and small. I even found ways to enjoy my pregnancy privately, morning walks through tree-lined streets, whispered conversations with the baby as I traced my belly, and little victories like negotiating contracts that finally allowed me to save a safety net. It was exhausting, isolating, but quietly, powerfully transformative. Every struggle was layered with purpose. Every sleepless night reminded me that independence wasn't a gift, it was earned, meticulously, day by day. And the thought of my parents leaving me alone in the house now, expecting me to simply give birth already, only reminded me how far I had come. They had never seen the woman I was becoming, the one who wouldn't need permission, validation, or hand-holding. I smiled faintly, touching the locket at my neck. They're going to see me differently soon enough. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made my pulse quicken. My parents and sister, suitcases rolling behind them, were back from Europe a day early, apparently expecting a tired, overwhelmed version of me. I watched through the window as they stepped onto the porch, laughing and chattering about their flights, cafes, and gondolas. Their casual tone stung. They assumed I'd simply be managing the house while they enjoyed themselves, as though my entire life revolved around their convenience. I straightened my blouse, adjusted the drape of my scarf, and took a deep breath. The living room was immaculate, the subtle scent of lavender from the candles blending with the aroma of fresh coffee I'd brewed for myself. Expensive yet understated art adorned the walls, pieces I had purchased after long months of saving. My office space was sleek, modern, filled with awards, books, and personal touches that told a story of persistence, talent, and quiet triumph. They stepped inside, their laughter fading as their eyes swept across the room. My sister, Sarah, stopped mid-step, her mouth slightly open. "Wait, is this yours?" she asked, voice tinged with awe and confusion. I gestured toward the space I'd carved out for myself, my calm voice carrying the weight of years of effort. "Yes. Every inch of it. Every late night, every sleepless moment, every decision I made alone. It's all mine." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, a flicker of guilt flashing in her eyes. My father, who had always been the picture of casual dismissal, looked as though he had swallowed a lemon whole. I walked toward them slowly, letting the silence hang before speaking again. "When you left for Europe, you assumed I'd simply watch the house while you enjoyed yourselves. You assumed I'd be struggling, overwhelmed, dependent. But while you were away, I was building something you never thought I could." I held up a folder, the cover embossed with my name, Hannah Lawson. Inside were contracts, account statements, and documents proving ownership of my small but thriving design firm. This is real. My business. My income. My independence. And yes, I touched my belly lightly, smiling. I am about to give birth, and I am ready. On my own terms. My sister's face flushed with embarrassment, and she looked away. My father ran a hand over his face, speechless. My mother's eyes welled with tears she couldn't quite release yet, a mixture of shame and astonishment clouding her features. The room was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock and my own measured breaths. I let them take it all in, the elegance, the power, the self-respect. Every subtle detail of this house, every award, every carefully chosen item whispered one truth: I didn't need anyone's approval to succeed. Finally, my voice softened, just enough to convey both authority and grace. I've waited long enough for recognition, for support, for help. I won't wait anymore. But I will extend it, if, and only if, the respect, effort, and boundaries are mutual. That's the choice you have now. The shock lingered on their faces, disbelief battling admiration. They had come expecting a version of me small enough to fit their narrative. Instead, they found a woman standing taller than any expectations, stronger than any doubts, and more alive than they had ever seen. I leaned against the edge of the kitchen island, letting my gaze sweep over my family. This wasn't just about money, status, or the house. It was about respect, boundaries, and finally reclaiming the space I had fought so hard to build. I'm willing to help, I began, letting my voice stay calm, firm, and measured. But things have to change. For all of you. And for me to feel safe, respected, and heard, these conditions aren't optional, they're necessary. My mother's shoulders stiffened. Conditions? She asked hesitantly, as though the concept itself was foreign. Yes, I replied. First, honesty. No assumptions, no dismissals. I want transparency, not just about the house, but about intentions, feelings, and actions. You can't just assume I'm struggling, overwhelmed, or unfit. I turned to my father. Second, accountability. The dismissiveness, the casual critiques, the way you've undermined me over the years, it stops now. If you want a relationship with me and my child, it has to be built on mutual respect. Period. Sarah, my sister, shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. And you, she murmured. For you, it's about effort. I want to see initiative, responsibility, and growth. No more assuming I'll handle everything for you. No more relying on my labor, patience, or forgiveness as a default. You have to step up, on your own terms, and take pride in your own journey. Support me when I ask, not when it's convenient for you. I let the words sink in, seeing the subtle weight of comprehension dawn on their faces. I could have yelled. I could have shut the door. But I wanted this moment to be constructive, not punitive. Compassion, after all, had been part of my journey. My power was in choosing when and how to extend it. Lastly, I continued, my hand brushing the locket at my neck. Boundaries are non-negotiable. I'm building a life for my child and myself. That doesn't include chaos, disrespect, or entitlement. If we're going to move forward, it has to be on terms that nurture growth, love, and integrity, not guilt, neglect, or assumptions. Silence fell, thick but not heavy. They were listening, really listening. Their past behavior, their casual disregard, the ways they had underestimated me, it was all laid bare. And yet, for the first time, they understood that my support, my love, my involvement came with reciprocity. They had to meet me halfway. I felt a quiet surge of power, tempered with warmth. I wasn't punishing them. I was redefining the rules of our relationship. I was showing them the respect and effort I expected, modeling the kind of family dynamic I had longed for, but had never received. By the end of the conversation, the shift was palpable. I wasn't just their daughter anymore. I was the architect of our future interactions, the guardian of my own well-being, and the mother who would guide this next generation with courage, clarity, and uncompromising love. Weeks passed, and slowly, I began to see the changes ripple through my family. My mother, once quick to dismiss, now asked for advice on small matters, showing a newfound respect for my opinions. She stayed to help with preparations for the baby, but without taking control, just support. My father, too, made visible efforts. He asked questions, listened more than he spoke, and even admitted mistakes from the past. Sarah surprised me the most. She started managing her own life with initiative and responsibility, learning the balance of independence and empathy I had once longed to see. When she helped paint the nursery, She did it quietly, respectfully, as though honoring not just my child, but the woman I had become. I would catch moments in the quiet of the house where I'd glance at my grandmother's locket resting on the dresser, a constant reminder of the advice that had set me on this path. Strength isn't given, it's earned. That little piece of metal had guided me from fear to independence, from isolation to empowerment, and now, it seemed, from resentment to reconciliation. One evening, as I settled into the rocking chair in the nursery with a cup of coffee, I felt a soft kick from my baby, a gentle reminder of the life I had nurtured on my own terms. I smiled, realizing how far I had come, from a young woman dismissed and underestimated to one who had built a life of meaning, respect, and love. I thought about the journey, the lonely nights, the small victories, the long hours spent learning and growing while keeping my successes private. I thought about the fire that had always burned in me, the refusal to settle, and the courage it took to set boundaries. And as my parents and sister began to meet my conditions, genuinely striving to change, I felt a sense of closure I had never known before. The past was acknowledged, the hurt honored, and the future rewritten, not dictated by anyone else's expectations, but by my choices, my rules, my heart. I pressed my hand to my belly and whispered softly, almost to myself, "We're ready. On our terms. Together, but on our terms." Strength, independence, and grace. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about living fully, unapologetically, and beautifully,